Hi folks, it is Coach Mo Faul coming to you live again, Motivational Monday. I'm going to scoochie up at the camera. I'm talking about something pretty deep today, and I'm actually going to do an entire series this week in commemorating all the breast cancer survivors, all the breast cancer folks who have passed from it, including a very close friend of mine. And I actually want to dedicate this Facebook Live series this week on my breast cancer journey to a woman who did not make it. And she passed away last year. She left two young kids, and her husband was a friend of mine I worked with when I got my diagnosis. And she came after me in her diagnosis, but unfortunately her cancer was a much rougher journey than mine, and eventually she succumbed to it. And so I just want to send out some blessing and prayers to all of those of us who know someone who has succumbed from breast cancer. Hello, Jean. Hello, Julia. Nice to see you, ladies. Because this month we recognize the impact of breast cancer on the women and men of this world, and what an awful cellular mechanism cancer is. And I want to share my journey with everyone or anyone who cares to listen to it, in the hopes of inspiring change in your life, in the hopes of inspiring change in your career. I'm going to talk about that and the impact of that very deeply today and throughout the rest of the week. As a matter of fact, a little bit more throughout the rest of the week, and I'm just going to try to zoom in a little bit more here. I've got like cords and stuff, so hang on one second. Whoop. Okay. So in this series, I am going to be talking about how I got cancer. Yep, I'm going to be just calling it out. You know, there's all this, G, do you think, Mo, and G, one second, I got to get a little bit. That's better. You know, there's a lot of speculation about how we get cancer and why we get cancer. I have the story for me. And it may be different for everyone, but I will tell you that science already, through epigenetics and the science of understanding how our chromosomes work, is already unfolding some of the mysteries of cancer, breast cancer in particular, since the survival rate is now pretty high if it's caught early. So I'm going to talk to you today about how I got cancer. And then tomorrow I'm going to talk about the best days of my life and my career and the worst days, and leading up to exactly what went down when I was diagnosed. And then I'm going to talk about on Wednesday what it felt like to be staring down the barrel of my life and death road. Then on Thursday, I'm going to talk about what it was like to actually have the surgery and be in the hospital. And there's a miracle. Actually, there's a few miracles that happened to me while I was in the hospital. It was a very synchronistic, serendipitous event to be in the hospital for the time I was recovering from my double mastectomy. And then I'm going to talk about the longest period of this whole, well, actually not really the longest, but I'm going to talk about my recovery. It's been just about 9 years since my surgery, and I see those scars every single day in the mirror. And there's an impact there. So I'd like to talk also about my recovery on Friday. So each day of this week, and I'm going to just find a time that works for my schedule, and of course it'll be Facebook Live for those of you who can pop in, and it will be on my Coach Mo Facebook feed, so you can find it there. Turn on your notifications if you'd like to hear my story. I do want to recognize the people who in my life have supported me and allowed me to be here to tell you the story. So, you know, my absolutely wonderful partner, my little sister, and my mom, the three of them were really the ones who rallied around at the closest points. And I'll talk about each and every one of them in the process as well. But before they got involved and before I got the diagnosis cancer, I want to talk about my career. Talk about the things that led to what I deem to be a cancerous environment in my body. Ever since I was a young girl, and for those of you who know me, ever since I was a young girl, I've wanted to make a difference in people's lives. Ever since being a young neighbor kid, and I saw neighborhood kids not doing well on the bicycle, and I taught them how to ride a bike without training wheels. And that specific experience as a 10, 11-year-old pigtail girl, bringing joy to the faces of kids in my neighborhood, didn't really occur to me how profound that was to who I am until I did some self-reflection after my breast cancer journey. And I talk about how we can make these types of reflections in our lives and understand our real impact and our real purpose in life. And I do this through the elevator pitch module in my Kick-Ass course. So for those of you who have been in or are in my Kick-Ass course, you might have heard that story as we've gone into that. But deeply, I've been a woman who has wanted to impact people's lives. It's what drives me. It's what turns me on. It's what makes me who I am at the very deep level. And so when I went to college to be a nurse. I wanted to help people. I wanted to make them better. And so I went to nursing for my college degree. And I came out as a cardiac intensive care nurse. Was working with heart transplant patients, open heart surgery, heart attack patients, people with very severe cardiac problems in the University of Pittsburgh Hospital. There I was, a 22-year-old, fresh, new nurse taking care of some of the toughest, most complex heart problems, and I loved it. But, after a while, it wasn't enough for me. And I had ambition to do more. I always had some ambition to do more and to make a bigger impact. And I didn't really know what that was. So I tried a bunch of different things early in my career. I went into cardiac rehab and health and fitness. I went into sales for a while thinking, oh, that's it. I have a great personality, so I'm the type of person who goes into sales. I tried a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And had there been career coaches at the time, I probably would have done well to have found one and gotten aligned with my purpose. I've always been interested in writing. I've written journals and I've done personal improvement since I was in college. And those things always fueled my passion for wanting to do more. But day in and day out, as I was busy and ambitious and trying to make an impact, I was frustrated. I was continually frustrated, like all the time. I was frustrated because inside of me, I felt that there was more for me, and I felt that I wanted to do more, and I felt that where I worked just wasn't giving me the chance. They weren't seeing me as how I felt I was, and they weren't offering opportunities. So I had a lot of jobs in my career, and most of it was in a progressive trajectory of moving forward in organizations and doing more. The first 10 years of my career were all about me learning new skills and advancing and doing more. Hello, Kimberly June Jones. And so all my early career, I was looking for my place. Again, frustrated. All the time frustrated, looking for my place. And I was raised by traditional parents in a traditional family. We went to college and we went to find a good job. So that was my deal. Working for someone else, getting a good job, advancing, better title, better pay. That was my thing. That was what I went for. So I kept advancing my career, and then in my 30s, I was looking for even more advancement. And I left the clinical scenario and I went into helping businesses create healthcare businesses. I wanted to do more. I wanted to have a bigger impact. I wanted to start healthcare businesses. I wanted to make more money. I wanted to have a lifestyle that was easy and allowed me to go on vacations and have a nice home and things like that. And when I hit my mid-30s, I got my first job as a vice president. And I was like, this is it. And I moved from Pittsburgh to North Carolina And I figured this was my career. This was finally it. I got hired as a vice president in a very well-known, at the time, healthcare management company, and I was on my way. But when I got there were two vice presidents with the same title, me and another woman. And I'm like, she doesn't know half of what I know. What's going on here? Well, they had a growth strategy, and they wanted a bunch of different vice presidents as kind of lieutenants growing their business. And immediately I felt frustrated that I wasn't the one, that I wasn't special, that I wasn't just coming there for my own career advancement and to make the company better. Like there was another one of me there, and she wasn't as smart and as experienced. At least that was the judgment I made, because I needed to make myself feel better. I was frustrated. And in that company, it was going the wrong direction just about the time I arrived. It was a little bit too little, too late, and the market of those types of companies went south. Frustration. I lost my job. I got let go, and here I was in North Carolina, no job, and I'm looking for a job. I finally land a consulting gig in Florida. I finally get hired in Florida. I moved to Florida. I'm frustrated that plum job just didn't work out. I'm frustrated. And I'm in my mid-30s at this point, and I'm moving to Florida, and I'm trying to make a career for myself. And that job didn't last very long. I had to sell off the assets and move on. Another vice president job that just blew up. Not because of me. The company just was going in the wrong direction. Then I got a job as a hospital administrator running their cardiac services. I thought, this is it. This is the job. Everything I've always been planning for. This is finally the job. And the pay was decent. The organization was highly reputable. I started as an executive director a couple of years in there. I was a vice president. I was making changes. I was doing the things that gave me impact. But the rest of the organization was disheveled and disorganized and not behind what I was doing. And I had 5 different bosses in 5 different years in that role. Eventually, I was reorganized out. Frustrated again. My career just felt like it was one frustrating point after another. I had a lot of success in my career, don't get me wrong, but I kept hitting peaks and frustrations, and I just all the time was feeling like something was going wrong. And that frustration, I believe, led to an inner cellular environment of internal anger, anxiety, basically poison. And around the time that I lost my job at that health system, I actually had a breast cancer scare. I had a positive mammogram, and at the time of the biopsy, a couple of weeks later, they couldn't find the lesion that they found on the mammogram. My mother had flown down from New York to be with me for that biopsy, and it ended up being nothing. So the body probably took care of itself, although God bless my mother, she believed it was her prayers, and may indeed have had something to do with it. There's a lot to be said for prayers, positive thinking, and imagining something different than what's in the physical world, and us shifting reality based on that. But I'll tell you what, that frustration, those job changes kept going on. At the time, I didn't really consider it to be part of this inner journey that was not going well. I considered just to be kind of like a luck of the draw. Certain people have positive mammograms, and certain people have this and that, and I was in the healthcare profession, and we just looked at the results. We looked at what's happening in the physical world as what to deal with. Well, I got another job, and another point of frustration, another example of not getting seen for what I felt was my contribution. And so on and on the frustrations went. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the worst day of my life and the best day of my life, and it's going to lead to the story of my diagnosis, but I want to dive backwards a little bit in what I've already told you. Inner frustration can lead to a lot of disease processes going on in our physical body. Not only do our thoughts lead to things, but the psychic energy of our energy body, the emotions that are stored there in our energy body eventually solidify and hit our physical body. So if we don't cleanse them, if we don't work them out, if we don't release them, if we don't allow them to flow through our energy body, they will take up home in the physical body. Our energy body is like this protective layer that's, between 12 and 18 inches around us. That is the transmitter and receiver of all the emotions that we have. It's like a sponge that surrounds us. And when we let emotions flow through and not become solidified, then we can have more freedom in our energy and physical body. But most of us aren't taught how to navigate that. So we tend to have experiences of our thoughts and feelings that are sitting in our energy body, and over time they solidify into physical matter, into the physical body. And so everything from high blood pressure to diabetes to cancers find their way in the physical body over time. And everyone's genetic predisposition, chromosomal engineering is different. And there are people who will get diabetes earlier than others. There are people who will get high blood pressure. There are people who will get breast cancer. There are people who will get ovarian or uterine cancer. You name the disease. The body may be picking the places for the disease based on the energy pattern that comes into the physical body. And there's been some studies on this with breast cancer, and oftentimes there's frustration about being a woman associated with it. And so the energy body is taking on the assault of our thoughts and feelings and experiences in our energy body. And over time, if those are not resolved, if they're not flown, if we don't flow them through and release them by doing certain energy work, exercises, meditation, etc., the non-physical energy of our frustration, the non-physical energy of our thoughts and feelings of not being good enough, of not being worthy, of not being in the right role and being in that frustration point all the time, eventually end up in our physical body. So I had some predispositions to breast cancer around some autoimmune diseases, some other things going on in my early life that make perfect sense for me. And as I look back, that the disease that would come my way through frustration, even though I was relatively healthy, was breast cancer. And it's not a happy thought. It is confusing at best. And when I was diagnosed, it was a real shocker to me. Because I was basically, I thought, the last person that someone would consider to be a cancer patient. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about what it was like to be diagnosed and how that came together. It was a pretty tumultuous time in my life, and there was so many good and bad things happening together that it was really a rough time. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Like I said, on Wednesday, I'm going to talk about like the first couple of weeks right before surgery. On Thursday, I'm going to talk about the surgery itself and what that experience was like. And there were some really amazing miracles that happened in the hospital at that time. And then Friday, I'm going to talk about my recovery and what it's meant to be a breast cancer survivor. And again, some other miraculous stories around that. My hope in sharing my story is to help others overcome the things that got in my way that I didn't pay attention to quickly enough. And all the women I work with in my Kick-Ass course, in the Career Love Facebook group, and the Clarity calls that my team and I do, all of this is to help women avoid the tragedy of life's traumas, frustrations, missteps turning into something against the self. And so many women I talk to and so many women I've worked with have already had that journey. There's a few women in my course right now who are breast cancer survivors as well. And it is nothing I wish upon anyone, but it is also one of those amazing experiences that when you're lucky enough, blessed enough to have survived it, it is a gift for the rest of my life, for the rest of one's life. It is a gift. Each day I have the opportunity to look at myself in the mirror with my scars and know that today I can make a difference in the world, and that I am compelled to do that because there was a point 9 years ago where I looked at life and death on the same day. And I'm just grateful to be here, and I am ambitious now to share my story and to lift others to a point where they feel happy with themselves. You see, some of the tragedy of this is I spent so many years not being happy with myself. And I didn't even know it really, because I was always kind of like a happy person, but really simmering underneath the surface, simmering at deep levels, was a deep unhappiness and frustration that I was not being seen for who I was. And the first misstep on that is not knowing how to be seen for myself, to myself. And that is the beginning of any disease process that we have as physical beings on this planet, because we are 98% energy beings and only 2% physical. So it does take a while for the non-physical, the thought, feeling energy to amalgamate itself into physical matter, into the body. But that was the first piece of my journey, was that I had enough poisonous thought processes circulating in my body, and I did not know how to effectively flow that through so that it wouldn't later turn into cancer. So my passion now, my life purpose now, is to help others find that alignment and that personal place where inner happiness and outer expression and success comes together, lines up. That's my whole mantra of bring your soul to work. It took me a long time. It took me through my breast cancer journey to learn how to bring my soul to work. And if you read my newsletter this morning, if you're not on my email list, I think you might be missing out on my Motivational Mondays every Monday. In your mailbox is a blog from me. Sometimes it's inspirational, sometimes it's instructional, sometimes it's educational, sometimes it's kick-ass. And either way, Motivational Monday could get your Monday and your week really started off in the right foot. So that's the beginning of my story. The beginning of my story is inner frustration that eventually turned to the disease of cancer. And thank goodness I'm here to talk about it, to possibly help others not have that experience. It was horrible and life-changing for sure. So this is the first day of a 5-day series of my breast cancer journey. And again, I'm commemorating it to my good friend and work colleague, Mauricio, and his departed wife, Isara. She didn't make it out of this disease process, but so many of us have. So it is my deep, deep, deep hope that this part of my story and the rest of the story that I'm going to tell this week is enough perhaps to move you toward something happier for yourself, something more deeply satisfying, and to release. Let's put a little to-do item, because I'm always big on to-dos. Why don't you consider one limiting belief or one constricting thought habit, thought process, at least one today, over the next 24 hours, that you can release. Whether it be anger at someone, usually that's anger at the self, or whether it's just a limiting thought of feeling not worthy, or maybe it's just negativity about a coworker or maybe your boss. Can you release that? Can you know that that energy is pulling you in the wrong direction? And can you take responsibility for allowing that situation to be just what you need? Just what you need to push yourself to expand. Could that possibly be a message to you to take it easy on yourself? I know I got about 1 million different messages that from a very young age, let's just call it from college through the age of 47, that I didn't listen to let go and to be easy on myself. Because that's where it starts, that's where it ends. So give yourself a little homework and choose something that you can let go of tonight, that you can let go of today. And be easy on yourself and someone else. And do not let the poison continue to circulate in you, no matter how small. And I will see you tomorrow. Again, I'm not sure exactly the time, so I'll post it in my group, in my Coach Mo Facebook group, what time I'll be live tomorrow. And again, I'm going to be talking about the diagnosis itself and the experience of that. Again, this is Coach Mo Faul. Bring your soul to work. Save your soul. Brighten it up. Get your life and your career to be exactly how you want it to be. I will see you tomorrow, and I will share another segment of my breast cancer journey. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that this has helped inspire and enliven you. Again, we've got a little task now. So tonight, we're going to let go and be easy. See you tomorrow.